There is a truth. Almost every Shih Tzu owner overlooks a single flea. Just one tiny parasite can trigger a full-blown nightmare that lasts for weeks. One bite can unleash relentless itching, sleepless nights, a raw skin, bleeding scratches, and something veterinarians call the overreactive itch cycle, a loop so intense that Shih Tzus often spiral faster and harder than any other breed. And the reason they suffer so violently is not random. It begins with the very thing that makes them beautiful, their dense double coat. That royal, luxurious coat Shih Tzus inherited from centuries of palace living has a dark side. It creates the perfect hiding place for fleas. A flea doesn't need to infest a Shih Tzu to cause chaos. It only needs to land for a moment, bite once, and disappear. The saliva in that single bite contains enzymes that trigger an allergic skin reaction up to 3 times stronger in flat-faced, sensitive-skinned breeds, like the Shih Tzu. You might not see anything when you part the fur, but under that thick layer of hair, the skin is already red, inflamed, and quietly under attack. And the worst part, fleas don't have to live on your Shih Tzu at all. They can live in your carpet, in the sofa, inside floor cracks, or in bedding, and survive there for up to an entire year. That's why more than 70% of flea-allergic Shih Tzus show no fleas on their body during vet exams. The real enemy is hiding in the environment, waiting to strike again. When a Shih Tzu is bitten, their nervous system reacts explosively. Breeds with short muzzles and delicate skin barriers have weaker sebaceous oil glands, meaning their skin dries, cracks, and inflames faster. This traps them in a vicious cycle: itch, scratch, skin damage, bacterial invasion, more itch, more scratching. A cycle that can escalate within hours. You may see your Shih Tzu freeze for a moment, then suddenly scratch violently as if something is crawling beneath the skin. And the painful truth is even a single weekly flea bite can keep a Shih Tzu itching all year. This isn't an exaggeration. It's the nature of delayed hypersensitivity, a prolonged allergic response that lingers long after the flea has vanished. The skin continues to react as if the danger is still there, making the Shih Tzu miserable, even in a clean home. And the danger grows every time your Shih Tzu scratches. Bacteria from their nails, the floor, or even their own mouth invade the tiny abrasions left on the skin. With thick fur trapping heat and moisture, these micro-wounds become breeding grounds for infection. In scientific terms, bacteria multiply 3 times faster in warm, humid environments, exactly the environment beneath a Shih Tzu's coat. It's terrifying to realize that such destruction can come from a parasite smaller than a grain of sand. But for Shih Tzus, this isn't an extreme case. It's a biological reality. A single flea, a massive consequence. And without understanding how differently this breed reacts, many Shih Tzus continue to suffer in silence. Day after day, night after night, unable to tell their owners that something tiny, something nearly invisible, has turned their skin into a battlefield. If fleas are the enemies you can't see, then allergies are the enemies that live everywhere, floating in the air, hiding in the food bowl, clinging to the carpet, slipping unnoticed into every breath a Shih Tzu takes. And what makes this terrifying is that Shih Tzus aren't just prone to allergies. They are biologically engineered to overreact to the world around them. From the moment a Shih Tzu is born, their skin barrier, already thinner and more delicate than many breeds, is compromised by their anatomy. Their short muzzle alters airflow and pulls irritants directly toward the face. Their large eyes water easily, dripping onto the surrounding fur and creating moist patches where yeast thrives. Their long coat traps pollen, dust, and mold spores like a sticky net, and their immune system, already sensitive, misidentifies harmless particles as threats. The result: a Shih Tzu doesn't just get itchy, their body declares war. Veterinary dermatology studies show that Shih Tzus experience allergic skin inflammation at rates nearly 40% higher than the average toy breed, and unlike Labradors or German Shepherds, who often show allergies as ear infections, the Shih Tzu's symptoms explode directly on the surface: the face, the paws, the belly, the armpits, and the tail base, the most vulnerable areas of their body. It begins quietly. A Shih Tzu licks a paw for a second too long, scratches the side of their face more often than usual, rubs their eyes against a blanket. You think it's just a habit? But beneath the surface, mast cells, tiny immune soldiers, have begun firing. Histamine floods the skin. The tissue swells. The nerves misfire and scream, itch louder and louder until the Shih Tzu can no longer sit still. This is why so many owners wake up at 3 in the morning to the sound of scratching, panting, licking, chewing. The war doesn't stop at night. And then, there is the dark side of food allergies. Many people assume dogs can eat anything, but Shih Tzus can react to proteins like chicken, beef, lamb, or even grains with terrifying intensity. One wrong protein can cause full-body inflammation within 24 hours, leading to dramatic symptoms: bright red paws, chronic ear moisture, swollen lips, eye discharge, and often the beginnings of hot spots. The cruel irony: the foods most likely to trigger allergies in Shih Tzus are the ones most commonly found in generic dog food: chicken, beef, wheat, corn, low-quality fillers, artificial flavors designed to make dogs eat more, even when the food is harming them. What makes allergies especially dangerous for Shih Tzus is the way they react emotionally. When the skin flares, their stress hormones spike. Their sleep becomes shallow. Their breathing grows faster from discomfort. Their temperament shifts: more clinginess, more whining, more restlessness. The itch isn't just physical, it rewires their entire day. And because their coat hides early redness, owners often don't notice the problem until the skin is already damaged. By the time the Shih Tzu begins chewing their feet raw, or rubbing their face so hard the fur begins to stain, the allergic cascade has been raging invisibly for days. Environmental triggers, food triggers, invisible triggers, all hitting a body that was never built to endure them. For Shih Tzus, allergies aren't an inconvenience. They're a silent predator. And once they strike, the battle only ends when the owner understands how to identify the threat and remove it before it destroys the skin completely. If fleas are the attackers and allergies are the ambushers, then dry skin is the enemy that creeps in quietly, slow, invisible, and underestimated until it has already taken hold of a Shih Tzu's entire body. Unlike the dramatic flare of an allergy, dry skin is subtle. It begins like a whisper, hiding beneath that long silk coat that convinces owners everything is fine, until the day the scratching becomes constant, the licking becomes obsessive, and the Shih Tzu, who once slept peacefully, suddenly wakes every hour, unable to rest. Shih Tzus are uniquely vulnerable to dry skin because the breed was never designed for modern living. Their ancestors lived in humid palaces, not air-conditioned apartments. Their double coat traps heat, but also traps dryness. And their sebaceous glands, the tiny oil factories that protect a dog's skin, are naturally less active than in most breeds. When moisture levels in the skin drop even 5%, a Shih Tzu's barrier can begin to crack. It often starts with something simple: a colder season, a heater running in the house, a grooming session where the hairdryer was just a little too hot, a bath with a shampoo slightly too harsh. Even low humidity in the air can begin the process. The skin loses water, the barrier weakens, microscopic fissures form, and now the Shih Tzu is open to bacteria, open to yeast, open to itching so deep it pulls them out of sleep like someone shaking them awake. Owners often mistake the signs: a Shih Tzu rolling on the carpet, cute; dragging their face across the sofa, funny; licking their paws at night, a habit. But dry skin doesn't announce itself with redness. It announces itself with behavior: restlessness, chewing at the same patch of fur, rubbing the head against furniture, shaking off constantly, even when the coat isn't wet. A Shih Tzu's way of saying, "My skin is burning," without ever making a sound. Scientifically, it's simple and terrifying. Do you know what happens when skin loses moisture? The protective lipid layer collapses. And yeast, particularly Malassezia. The yeast, Shih Tzus are notoriously sensitive to, begins to multiply. What started as mild dryness can turn into yeast overgrowth, which then turns into inflammation, which then triggers more scratching. A chain reaction you can't see until it's too late. And here is the cruelest twist: because Shih Tzus have dense, flowing coats, dryness often stays hidden until the skin is already flaking, until dandruff begins to appear on the dark parts of their fur, until their once soft neck feels rough beneath the fingers. Many owners only discover the issue when running their hand along the spine and finding the hair coarse, brittle, or thinning. Dry skin also affects their emotions. A Shih Tzu in discomfort becomes clingy, more anxious, less playful. They guard their space. They flinch when touched in certain spots. They lick their paws until the fur turns rusty-colored from saliva. The dryness doesn't just attack the skin, it infiltrates the Shih Tzu's entire sense of well-being. And the worst part? Dry skin rarely comes alone. It weakens the barrier. And once the barrier breaks, the door opens for every other enemy: fleas, mites, bacteria, yeast, all waiting for the moment the Shih Tzu's guard slips. This is why dry skin, gentle, quiet, ignored, may be the most dangerous enemy of all. Hot spots are not a simple skin irritation. They are biological explosions that ignite under the dense double coat of a Shih Tzu, where warmth, moisture, and bacteria merge into one catastrophic storm, turning what begins as a harmless itch into a rapidly spreading wound that seems to grow with every hour the dog is left unattended. A Shih Tzu can go to sleep with perfectly normal skin and wake only a few hours later with a hidden patch of fur that feels unnaturally warm, damp, and sour-smelling, a scent so subtle that many owners dismiss it until they press their fingers deeper and realize the coat is clumping together. Only when the fur is parted does the truth emerge: a circular patch of raw, inflamed, oozing skin where the hair has fallen away entirely, glistening with bacterial exudate and looking disturbingly like a burn. On a Shih Tzu, whose thick coat traps humidity more effectively than almost any toy breed, this kind of wound spreads with terrifying speed, advancing across the skin far faster than the owner can imagine. The nightmare begins quietly. A single moment of irritation, a flea bite, a grain of dust trapped under the coat, a patch of dryness. A small allergy flare pushes the Shih Tzu to lick or scratch. And this one act becomes the spark that ignites the entire process. Saliva, warm and filled with enzymes, sinks into the coat where it cannot evaporate, instead being trapped between the layers of hair. This creates a microenvironment of warmth and moisture, a perfect incubator for the bacteria that live naturally on the skin. Once the conditions shift in their favor, those bacteria begin multiplying at nearly triple speed, overwhelming the Shih Tzu's already fragile skin barrier and causing it to break down from the surface inward, exposing nerve endings and generating an itch so intense and unbearable that the dog has no choice but to attack the area again and again. And this is where the tragedy accelerates. Every lick, every scratch, every rub against the carpet or sofa adds more moisture, more friction, more heat, driving the infection deeper and wider under the protective curtain of fur. The thick coat that once felt like silk to the touch now becomes the enemy, sealing in the heat like a greenhouse and allowing the wound to expand outward in a wet, circular bloom. The dog's behavior reflects the escalation long before the skin reveals it. Restless pacing, sudden jerking movements as the nerves fire painfully, hiding under furniture, resisting touch on one side of the body, or abruptly waking in the night to gnaw at the same spot again and again, unaware that every attempt at relief is feeding the fire. What makes hot spots especially dangerous on Shih Tzus is how easily they go unnoticed until they are already severe. Unlike short-haired breeds where the skin reveals every change instantly, a Shih Tzu's coat masks the early redness, the moistness, even the swelling, keeping the wound hidden until the smell intensifies or the dog's behavior becomes impossible to ignore. By the time the owner realizes something is wrong, the infection has usually broken through multiple layers of the skin, and the Shih Tzu is caught in a state of distress that affects not only its body, but its psychological balance. They become clingy, yet avoidant, desperate for comfort, yet fearful of being touched on the painful side, unable to sleep, unable to rest, trapped in a cycle of agony that grows with every passing hour. Hot spots on a Shih Tzu are not minor skin issues. They are emergencies disguised beneath a beautiful coat. They spread faster, hurt deeper, and destabilize the dog emotionally, in a way few owners expect. And unless they are recognized and treated quickly, the damage they inflict can become a spiral from which recovery is slow, painful, and sometimes incomplete. There is a final enemy in the Shih Tzu's world. An enemy far smaller than a flea, yet infinitely more sinister, because it does not strike from the outside, but rises from deep within the skin itself, hidden in places even the thickest comb cannot reach, waiting in silence until the dog's immune system falters for even a moment. And that enemy is the mite. These microscopic creatures, especially the Demodex mites that live inside hair follicles, are present in almost every dog on Earth. But only certain breeds, the fragile-skinned, double-coated, short-muzzled breeds like the Shih Tzu, are vulnerable enough for them to transform from harmless passengers into a spreading, devouring infestation. The terrifying part is that the early stages are invisible to the human eye, even when they have already begun, carving small pockets of inflammation deep inside the hair shafts, weakening the skin's structure and preparing it for collapse. A Shih Tzu with mite overgrowth never changes all at once. It begins with subtle shifts that look like ordinary behavior, a moment of scratching near the ear, a faint lick along the ankle, A brief rub of the face against the carpet. All so harmless on their own that an owner shrugs them off without a second thought? Unaware that beneath the surface, the mites have already multiplied into the thousands, feeding on skin oils, burrowing deeper, triggering an immune reaction that the Shih Tzu's delicate barrier cannot contain. As their numbers grow, the skin becomes inflamed from the inside outward. Follicles weaken, and fur begins to loosen until small circular patches of hair start to fall away, revealing tender, resinous skin underneath. At first glance, it does not look alarming. A coin-sized patch, smooth, warm, almost dry. But this is the beginning of a condition that spreads with frightening efficiency. Because the Shih Tzu's thick coat traps heat and humidity, the environment beneath the fur becomes ideal for secondary invaders. Bacteria slip into the weakened follicles, yeast flourishes in the moist creases the dog creates when trying to scratch, and the immune system, already overwhelmed by the mites, begins losing control. The dog does not simply itch. It feels a deep, maddening irritation that comes from within. A crawling, burning discomfort that cannot be reached, no matter how hard it scratches. This is why Shih Tzus with mite infestations often scratch until they bleed. Often wake at night in restless frustration. Often rub their faces so hard that the fur stains or falls away entirely. The more their skin breaks, the more their body becomes a battlefield where every layer, the surface, the follicles, the oils, the nerves, is dragged into the conflict. What makes this condition so emotionally devastating is how it changes the Shih Tzu's spirit, because the pain originates from within, not from a surface trigger. They cannot find relief. They become withdrawn, clingy, trembling at sudden noises, confused by the sensations tearing through their skin. They avoid touch in some places and desperately seek it in others, torn between the need for comfort and the pain of being handled. Their appetite wavers, their sleep fractures into tense, shallow moments, and their once soft, expressive eyes take on a glassy, distressed look that tells the truth before the skin ever does. And while fleas and allergies are frightening in their own way, mites are something else, entirely, a biological invasion that begins in silence, grows without warning, and only becomes visible when the damage is already deep. For Shih Tzus, a breed with sensitive skin, a fragile lipid barrier, and hair that traps every drop of moisture, this is the perfect storm. Once mites take root, the window for early intervention collapses quickly. And delaying treatment means allowing the invisible threat to entrench itself deeper into the skin, where medication becomes harder to deliver and recovery becomes slow, painful, and emotionally draining for both dog and owner. This is the cruel truth. Mites do not need opportunity, they only need weakness. And the Shih Tzu, with all its beauty and fragility, offers that weakness far too easily. Unless someone who loves them learns to see the signs before the enemy beneath the skin fully awakens,